Decimal fractions, fractional writing of decimal numbers. Chapter 10 on the page 57. Decimal fractions. At the end of this chapter, I will be able to recognize a decimal fraction. So, بآخر هيدا الدرس راح نصير نعرف إذا هل fraction is decimal fraction or not. Like these fractions, I have to know if this a decimal fraction or not, and 2 over 5 if it's a decimal fraction or not. Write a decimal fraction in the form of a fraction whose denominator is a power of 10. So 2 over 5 is a decimal fraction. We have to write its denominator as power of 10. So إذا ال 5 بدي أخليها تصير 10, I should multiply by 2, then multiply 2 by 2. So I'm equal fraction to the fraction 2 over 5, which is 4 over 10. So 4 over 10 equal 2 over 5. But its denominator is 10 or powers of 10. راح نحكي عن powers of 10. نعرف شو هن powers of 10. Write a decimal fraction in the form of a decimal number and vice versa. So a decimal fraction بدي اكتبه as decimal number. So رح نتعلم الطريقة كيف أنا ممكن أكتب decimal fraction بهذه الطريقة. This is a decimal number. بنلاحظ هون في عندي دي decimal point، وكمان لازم أكتب in the vice versa، يعني من decimal number to decimal fractions. A fraction A over B is decimal if. So إذا أنا عندي fraction A على B، يعني numerator على denominator، بنقول عنه decimal fraction if. It can be written as a fraction in which the denominator is power of 10. So إذا ال B الموجودة هون أو denominator could be written as 10 or power of 10. مين هن ال powers of 10؟ هن 10, 100, 1000, 10,000, 100,000. So the powers of 10, the 10 is multiplied by itself. 10 times 10, 10 times 10 times 10. So 10 times 10 is 100, 10 times 10 times 10,000, and then 10,000, 100,000. So هيدول نسميهم ال powers of 10. أنا بقدر بختصر هيدي الكتابة، فبشوف ال 10 how many times is multiplied by itself، وبحط عدد صغير فوق n بدلني كم مرة 10 مضروبة بنفسها. So هون بنلاحظ 10 times 10 مضروبة بعدها، هون عندي 10 one time، هون عندي 10 two times. 10 is multiplied by itself 1, 2, 3 times. 10 multiplied by itself 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So we put 10 power 4. 10 multiplied by itself 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So 10 power 5. كمان there is a relation between this number here and the number of zeros. So 10 power 5 يعني في عندي 5 zeros. 10 power 4 4 zeros. 10 power 3 3 zeros. Okay. 10 power 2 2 zeros. 10 power 1 1 zero. 10 power 0 يعني no zeros, just 1. So these are the powers of 10. بيهموني powers of 10 حتى أقدر أنا أكتب denominator as power of 10. So فإذا a fraction is decimal if the denominator of this fraction could be written as power of 10. And then if the quotient of A by B is exact, so يعني A divided by B equal Q, or the quotient. So if the quotient is exact, that means it terminates، يعني في عندي عدد معين من decimal digits. So if the decimal or the quotient is exact, then the fraction is a decimal fraction. فإذا to know a fraction if it's a decimal or not، فإذا denominator could be written as power of 10 and the quotient is exact. So كمان خلينا نشوف هون. فإذا here 12 over 5 is a decimal fraction. Why? Because 5 could be written as 10. فإذا هيدي مثل هون. فإذا denominator could be written as 10 it multiplied by 2, and the quotient here is exact. So إذا عملنا division operation it terminates, and the quotient is exact. So the decimal writing of this fraction 12 over 5 is 2.4. So 12 over 5 equals 2.4. 12 over 5 is the fraction, is the decimal fraction, and 2.4 is the decimal form. So this is the decimal fraction and this is a decimal form. So these are the powers of 10, and these are the factors of powers of 10. These factors are very important. 2 times 5 is 10, 20 times 5 is 100, 50 times 200, 25 times 400, 25 times 40,000, 250 times 4, 125 times 8, 500 times 2, 200 times 5. All these are factors of 1000. فإذا هيدول كمان كتير مهم نحفظ هيدول الفاكتورز حتى أقدر أنا أكتب the fraction in the form أو the denominator of the fraction in the form of power of 10. So in the case مثلا we have 9 over 8 could be written as power of 10. Yes, 8 is multiplied by 125. So I multiply by 125 times 125, and here we get a fraction of denominator, that's 1000, which is power of 10. If the quotient of the division of a by b is not exact, then the fraction is not decimal fraction. فإذا أنت بقول عن decimal fraction is not a decimal fraction in this case if the quotient is not exact. يعني so إذا 5 divided by 6, so 5 divided by 6, and here we have the quotient, and the quotient is not exact. ما عم يخلص عندي quotient. So the 5 over 6, it is not a decimal fraction because the quotient is not exact. Quotient is not exact, and the division operation do not terminate. فإذا أنا بقدر كمل division operation ما بتخلص عندي. So that's why we say a over b in this case is a not a decimal fraction. So a n over d, numerator over the denominator, if d could not be written as power of 10, that means it's not a decimal fraction. If the denominator could be written as 10 or power of 10, then we say that this fraction is a decimal fraction. فإذا لأعرف إذا decimal fraction بشوف denominator إذا بينكتب as power of 10, so it's a decimal fraction. Another way حتى نعرف إذا fraction or not بنشوف quotient n divided by d. n divided by d equal quotient. If the quotient do not terminate or is not exact, the division does not terminate, so it's a not decimal fraction. If the quotient is exact and the division terminates, then it's a decimal fraction. فإذا بالحالة الثانية إذا كان quotient exact, so it's a decimal fraction. So as a summary, fraction n over d is a decimal if could be written, the denominator d could be written as power of 10, the quotient is exact, the division terminates. It's not a decimal fraction if the denominator could not be written as power of 10, the quotient is not exact, and the division do not terminate.